Welcome to every last one. Okay, you guys like post-punk. I was gonna do my new wave starter pack for 1980, but happy to put the brakes on that one for a little bit to go deeper with part 2 of post-punk 1980. Last week I covered The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and others. Link to that video in the description. Today, I can't wait to share the stories behind some lesser known and underrated post-punk releases from 1980, not to mention show off my vinyl. So stick around because today, we're gonna discuss success derailing triple albums, pleading with the BBC, and using a deck of cards to guide creativity. This is Post-Punk Starter Pack 1980, Part 2. Post-punk is a fairly broad musical genre that developed out of the explosion that punk rock set about in the late 70s. Post-punk bands wanted to push the envelope even further, departing from the simplicity that punk rock had to embrace experimenting with merging diverse musical genres, new technologies including synthesizers, and using new and forward-thinking recording methods. The first wave of post-punk bands would include The Birthday Party, Public Image Limited, The Sound, Joy Division, and many more bands, some of which we're going to be discussing today. While the genre has gone on to experience a renaissance in the past 20 years, with countless post-punk revival bands being born, I'm going to be sticking to its formative years for these videos with an intention of highlighting both classics and lesser-known gems. Okay, let's dive in. First record, Killing Joke. Killing Joke is the self-titled debut album by London post-punk band Killing Joke, released in October 1980 by EG via Polydor Records. This album is ground zero for the industrial metal that would begin to appear throughout the 80s, and groups such as Faith No More, Nine Inch Nails. In February 1979, singer and keyboardist Jazz Coleman and drummer Paul Ferguson were looking to fill out their lineup. They put an ad in Melody Maker with the words, "Bass, lead, to tell the Killing Joke. We mean it, man. Total exploitation, no information, anonymity." They soon recruited guitarist Geordie Walker as well as bassist Youth. After releasing a few singles, they would begin work on their debut in August 1980 at Marquee Studios in London. The band would produce themselves, recording much of the record live in the studio as basic as possible, no overdubs to speak of. The album's lyrics were written by Coleman and Ferguson, expressing their opinions on issues such as politics, death, hypocrisy, human nature, pollution, and exile. Upon release, the album was pretty much ignored by both the press and most record buyers. Reflecting on this years later, Jazz Coleman said, "It got slagged off by everybody, and then 8 years later we were told it was a groundbreaking record. People are fickle, and you have to stand by your own creations." In a review for AllMusic decades later, Bradley Toriano praised the album, writing, "Since 1980, there have been 100 bands that sound like this, but before Steve Albini and Al Jorgensen made it hip, the cold, metallic throb of Killing Joke was exciting and fresh." Opener Requiem is my favorite here, with its relentless synth stab and infectious distorted guitar driving the tune forward while Jazz Coleman sings of the coming world dystopia. When the meaningful words, when they cease to function, when there's nothing to say, when will they start plotting against? War Dance features another hypnotic, heavy, syncopated groove. Coleman's vocals are distorted and almost feature like a subtle swirling tremolo effect. Clearly Al Jorgensen would be taking notes half a decade later when looking for ways to toughen up his band Ministry's sound. The Wait is another album highlight, which would be covered by Metallica in 1987. This one plunges you into this morose, sprinting, tom-heavy ride towards its chorus. It has to be mentioned that the tone of these guitars was not something you'd be hearing on records at this point. Guitarist Geordie Walker would tune down to a D and use two heads on his cabinet to attain this deep yet brittle, industrial-sounding, metallic guitar effect. This is my original UK pressing from 1980. repress. Picked this one up last summer. It's a gatefold. Half black, half clear. Next record, Bauhaus, In the Flat Field. In the Flat Field is the debut studio album by Northampton Gothic rock band Bauhaus, released on the 3rd of November 1980 as the very first full-length LP by influential label 4AD, consisting of guitarist Daniel Ash, brothers David J on bass and Kevin Haskins on drums, along with the idiosyncratic Maxell model Peter Murphy on vocals. This group would not only be regarded as formative post-punk alumni, but also pioneers of the burgeoning gothic rock sound. Following their seminal 9.5-minute first single, Bela Lugosi's Dead, the band had a clear conception of how they wanted this record to sound, so like Killing Joke, they opted to produce it themselves. The album release was actually delayed from September as the band found it difficult to record a version of track Double Dare as good as the one that they had performed on DJ John Peel's BBC Radio 1 program. It would take them 2 months after applying for permission to the BBC to get approval, following an obstruction from the Musicians Union. It would be worth it. The rawness of this version of Double Dare is truly one of the scariest sounding performances ever put to tape. The overdriven bass and syncopated drumming provide a perfect foundation for Ash's screechy guitar sound and Murphy's vocals that sound almost like he's carrying out an exorcism with himself. Title track In the Flat Field barrels in with Kevin Haskins showing up Joy Division drummer Stephen Morris playing this exceptional motoric pattern. The guitars, again, they're just so scratchy, like they're conjuring spirits or warding off apparitions. Most definitely something macabre. This song sounds like what would happen if Joy Division were possessed by demons while recording Unknown Pleasures. I have to talk about Crowds. When I discovered this one in high school, this was hands down the best ever Fuck You song. I still remember listening to this one on repeat. The contrast between the ragged emotion in Peter Murphy's vocal delivery and the lightweight piano and guitar backing gets me every time. Crowds is like a tender dagger directed towards an immoral ex. Love the way it jolts any casual listener around the halfway point with the epic couplet, "You worthless bitch, you fickle shit." If you weren't giving Murphy your full attention, well, you're paying attention now. This is a 2008 repress. This one's number 315. Inner sleeve. Next record, Echo and the Bunnymen, Crocodiles. Crocodiles is the debut album by Liverpool band Echo and the Bunnymen, released on the 18th of July, 1980 on WEA subsidiary Korova. The band formed in 1978 and originally consisted of Ian McCullough on vocals and rhythm guitar, Will Sargent on lead guitar, Les Patterson on bass, and a drum machine. After recording their first single, Pictures on My Wall, they would be joined by drummer Pete DeFreitas and record their debut over 3 weeks at Rockfield Studios in Wales. Produced by Bill Drummond before founding the KLF and infamously burning £1 million, Crocodiles is generally a dark and moody record. In his excellent book Rip It Up and Start Again, British music journalist Simon Reynolds describes the sound of the album as parred and sparse. Inspired by psychedelia and clearly the vocals of Jim Morrison, Crocodiles at once showcases 4 individual players sure of their gifts and their ability to bring it all together to make something more than the sum of their parts. The re-recorded version of Pictures on My Wall featured here evokes a powerful blend of post-punk and psychedelia with an anthemic chorus and haunting vocals. Released as the album's second single, Rescue is a song that showcases their distinctive guitar sound that I could listen to over and over. Compared by critics at the time to the sparse guitar sound of the early Cure, The song's opening hook lures you into an upbeat and celebratory track that remains a live favorite for the Bunnymen to this day. All that jazz drops you right in the middle of things in progress, with McCulloch's vocals questioning, "Where the hell have you been?" over top of Les Pattinson's driving bass line. Eventually, some angular guitars and heavy tom rolls carry things towards the finale. Of all the songs, Villiers Terrace would most closely point towards the dramatic and majestic sound they would perfect on their 1984 classic, Ocean Rain. 1980 Italian press. Inner sleeve. Next record, The Clash Sandinista. Sandinista is the fourth studio album by London band The Clash, released on the 12th of December, 1980. Upon release, Sandinista confused a lot of people. After the success of their breakthrough double album London Calling, Joe Strummer proclaimed that the group's next release was going to be even longer. The band agreed to a decrease in album royalties in order to release what would turn out to be an expansive, genre-hopping, 36-song, 2.5-hour triple album. Strummer said he wanted to make something for people who worked on oil rigs or in the Arctic Circle and didn't get the chance to get to the record store on the regular. The album's title refers to the Sandinistas of Nicaragua, who overthrew their nationalist government in 1979, establishing a revolutionary government in its place. Full of Marxist themes as well as scathing critiques of communism, initial reviews of Sandinista were mostly poor. In the NME, Nick Kent wrote that, quote, "The record simply perplexes and ultimately depresses." Upset, The Clash approached the editor to have the record re-reviewed. The request was denied. Years on, it would appear on Alternative Press's list of the 10 essential political revolution albums, as well as Pitchfork's list of the 200 best albums of the 1980s. Musically, each of its 6 sides would have its own feel and sound, jumping around between dub, punk, new wave, post-punk, and reggae. With all this diversity, one could argue Sandinista isn't really post-punk save for a few tracks. However, since the genre is essentially an umbrella term that, like new wave, welcomed experimentation with blending diverse sounds, to me, it perfectly encapsulates the genre's ethos. The Magnificent Seven is a protest song about the daily grind of laborers getting up and getting to work day after day. The song begins with the line, "Ring ring, it's 7 a.m., move yourself to go again," as well as the lyric, "It's no good for man to work in cages. Head to town, he drinks his wages." There's something so universal about that one line in particular, and the way it's delivered over the shimmering disco beat. The song's style was inspired by old-school hip-hop acts from New York City, like the Sugar Hill Gang and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Police on My Back is another example of The Clash delivering a terrific transformational cover. The song appears in a blast of jagged, angular post-punk guitars that plays like a mantra throughout various intervals. The rhythm section keeps the groove shuffling along, over which Mick Jones and Joe Strummer deliver some excellent lead and call-and response vocals. Somebody Got Murdered is an underrated post-punk song, and certainly the most sublime and haunting Clash song. This is Mick Jones at his best. I love the quirky synth bit that comes in towards the end. The production is almost shoegaze, something that I'm sure Chapter House surely noticed when they were recording their album, Breather. It's a 2013 repress. Reproduction of the original lyric and graphic sheet. First LP. Second LP, and third LP. And final record for today, Talking Heads, Remain in Light. I had to end it here. As great as the other records on this list are, this one is by far the most timeless. Not only does it sound not feel dated, to me, it ages like a fine wine. Unbelievable it's 45 years old. Remain in Light is the fourth studio album by New York City rock band Talking Heads, released on October 8th, 1980 by Sire Records. Produced by Brian Eno, who had also worked with them on their previous two albums, Remain in Light is a record that combines a myriad of styles, from pop to funk to new wave to Afrobeat, to create something wholly unique and fresh. Much of the recording process on Remain in Light came out of these lengthy studio jams, building these complex rhythmic patterns that would play off of each other in very distinctive ways. At the time, the band was highly inspired by the sounds that Nigerian musician Fela Kuti was channeling. The band's sci-fi funk process involved Eno's use of oblique strategies, including the random chance cards he had used successfully on the sessions to produce David Bowie's Berlin trilogy. The cards would provide guidance in subtle and not so subtle ways. Eno would flash a card with something on it such as the word wobble, and a member of the band would have to interpret it. Other cards would have directives on them such as honor thy error as hidden intention. The band would invite a flurry of guest musicians into the studio to help build up these increasingly complex, multi-layered tracks, many of which were Eno's collaborators from the past, such as John Hassell, Adrian Belew. Eno would also bring a lot of his previous experimentation with loops from records like No Pussyfooting, Evening Star in to inform these sessions, helping to set up these tight, locked groove foundations for the band to work off of. Opening track, Born Under Punches, is extremely minimal in its instrumentation, with only a handful of musical notes allowed to play off the intersecting polyrhythms at key intervals. David Byrne delivers his vocals in a stream of consciousness way, as vocal harmonies and various other jangly guitar parts and effects carry things to a close. The most popular track here, and probably Talking Heads' biggest hit, is the song Once in a Lifetime. Eno's sine wave arpeggios flutter away over top of this massive layered drum groove and Byrne's all-time best lyric. By the time the chorus hits, you can't help letting yourself get swept away with the rhythm and the emergence of this brilliant, overdriven Hammond organ. My personal favorite is Seen and Not Seen, this mellow and unassuming track that casually saunters along with a skittering rhythm, funk bass, and Byrne's spoken word lyrics, until this faraway reversed guitar riff and Byrne's own vocal harmonies get piled over top, morphing the track's emotional feel into something unexpected. This is truly the magic in this music. A song like Seen and Not Seen might not grab you on the first or maybe even 15th listen, but one day, something just clicks. You're older, face new experiences, and where you might not have previously seen the brilliance in this track, well, now you do. This is a reissue, inner sleeve, white vinyl. I wanted to end today with a quote I found from Uncle Trent. It's from an interview he did 12 years ago with Fader, where he's reflecting on how technology has changed how we consume music in present day, and how music, being so prevalent now in digital rather than in physical form, is affecting how we buy and consume music. Speaking on his experiences growing up, he says, quote, "If you invested in an album, you played the shit out of it. Even if you didn't like it, you kept listening to it because it was one of a limited number you had access to. That definitely changed my tastes. If the Clash's Sandinista came out today, I wouldn't have spent the time with it to decipher what was going on there. If Talking Heads' Remain in Light came out today, I would have listened to it like, this is fucking weird, I don't get it, whatever, what's the next thing? But because I pushed myself through that barrier, it revealed itself as this mind-expanding thing. I can't tell you the last time I spent that much time with something. You know, Trent, I can't either. But I really did enjoy getting reacquainted with these 5 classics and making this video. So that's gonna do it for today. I'm going to link my first post-punk 1980 video in the description, so you can check that one out too. Little disclaimer, I had a cold while filming it, so my voice is a little crap. Sorry for that. Are you familiar with all of the records I covered? What are your favorite post-punk albums of 1980 or of all time? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. You can see more of my videos right here. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you guys in the next one.